Hi, my name is Ryan Wollner, and today we're going to be talking about CSI backups with PX Backup. So PX Backup is a separate product from Portworx Enterprise offered by Portworx, and it targets the backup and restore of Kubernetes applications and their data. So of course this works well with Portworx Enterprise, today our software-defined storage layer, but what if you're using a different CSI provider? Now, CSI is the Container Storage Interface, is a standard and de facto standard in Kubernetes today, allowing various Kubernetes storage providers to tap in the creation, deletion, attachment, and even snapshotting of volumes today. There are various different providers out there, such as pure PSO with flash array, or AWS EBS volumes, or even Ceph RBD volumes. So what if you're using one of those providers, not PX Enterprise, and still want to use PX Backup for your backup of Kubernetes and cloud native applications? Well, that's what we're going to cover today. So Portworx Backup is deployed in the data center and interacts with something called Stork. Stork is the storage orchestrator for Kubernetes. And what this allows Portworx to do is tap into the various APIs within Kubernetes and the scheduling aspects of Kubernetes as well. For backup, it's used to be able to talk to the CSI providers and the CSI API in general. So what if you're using a generic CSI provider with Portworx Backup? Well, Stork will go ahead and initiate the backup of all pods and objects. So these are things like deployments, secrets, config maps, services, and pods. Then it will actually take snapshots using the volume snapshot and volume restore capabilities in CSI today. This will create a reference snapshot of your data used by the application on the backend provider. Keep in mind that your generic CSI provider must support volume snapshot and the volume restore capability. If not, then generic providers won't work with PX Backup to back up your data. Keep in mind today that this data is always going to exist on the backend provider. Today, we don't copy the data out of it and put it anywhere. That's going to happen in a future release. But what happens is you get a backup of all objects, including the PV and PVC objects, but data exists on the backend provider. This means that you can go ahead and restore these applications, the objects and the PV and PVC and data within them, to the same namespace or a different namespace within the same Kubernetes cluster that Portworx Backup took a backup in the first place. So hopefully this gives you an understanding of what PX Backup can do with CSI providers and how it can provide backup and restore for providers other than PX Enterprise, like pure PSO, AWS, and Ceph. There are a number of different providers out there. I'll put a link in the bottom of this video as well. So now let's check this out in a lab. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. Okay, so here we are at the CSI Backup Lab. Let's go ahead and log into our PX Backup instance to get started. As you can see here, we have a Ceph cluster and a Portworx cluster. We're talking about the CSI backups, the generic CSI backups for providers that aren't Portworx in this video. So we're going to focus on this Ceph cluster. You can see here that in this cluster, we have a WordPress namespace. Ceph has already deployed, WordPress is running, WordPress is using MySQL as a backend. So you can see here we have the WordPress service, the persistent volume claims for WordPress and MySQL, the deployment of those pods, the secrets for MySQL, and the persistent volumes. So this is all the objects that go into an application in Kubernetes. And we need to take a backup of these applications. And when they're using CSI driven volumes, we can use PX Backup here because PX Backup does support the generic CSI providers. So keep in mind here that you need to make sure that the volume snapshot class is available. So by doing the kubectl get volume snapshot class, you should be able to see your volume snapshot class. In this case, this is our CSI RBD plugin because we are using Ceph to kind of showcase this feature in this demo. And I'll show you how this actually is used later on. So here's our blog. It's running here. We have a hello world post, and we're going to add some data to this, right? So let's go ahead and head over to the admin area of WordPress. We're going to, yes, I know my password is unsafe. Let's go ahead and add a new post. New post for CSI backups. CSI backups are great. So let's publish this post. And now we can see our post here, and we can see that there's the Hello World post and the new post here. And now we want to, in this case, take a backup. So say that we're, running this in production. Every time there's a new post, we trigger a backup job. We can go in here to the application namespace and click backup within px backup. Give it a name. Just do backup 004. Backup location, we're using FlashBlade S3 compatible endpoint for this. And here's where your snapshot class comes in. I know we're using CSI volumes backed by Ceph in this case, so I want to make sure and select the appropriate snapshot class. We're not using a schedule or rules, so this is really all that's needed to take a backup. So now this will actually start a backup of our WordPress pod, the deployments, the service, the secrets, the PVC that backs WordPress, which is Ceph, and the PVC that backs MySQL, which WordPress is using, which is also based on Ceph. And this will make sure we have a up-to-date backup of the WordPress blog that we just updated. So here, after a quick refresh, we can see that it is successful. You can see there's 2 CSI-based volumes in this backup. You can get all the information in the show details here, including the snapshot class, volumes, and all that data. So now we have an up-to-date backup. So now let's say we want to go ahead and restore this to the original post. So maybe this is for test and dev, or you're just testing the backup in terms of procedures. Either way, let's go to our original backup, which this backup here actually is our first backup we took when we created the WordPress blog. So now we can say CSI restore, if I can type, 03, and we're just going to name it this. Select the Ceph cluster that we're restoring to, so we're restoring right back to the Ceph cluster. Remember, right now you have to go back to the original cluster because we can't move the actual data around. So here we're not going to choose a custom restore. We're just going to basically overwrite the existing WordPress blog. So we're going to replace existing resources and click restore. So now this restore job is underway. What's happening is it will go ahead and recognize that we're restoring over the original namespace. We'll clean those resources up. It will restore from this backup the PVCs that are based on Ceph from the actual snapshots that were taken, and WordPress will come back up. So here we go. We have 2 CSI volumes restored. Our backup and restore is a success. So now what's happening in the background here, we can see that kubectl get pod WordPress. We can see that the pods are created just a few seconds ago because we just restored these resources to our cluster. And once both become running, then we'll go ahead and check that our user interface reflects that we restored to our original blog entry. All right, so now both pods are running. This means my SQL was able to come up with that snapshot. So now if we head over to our backup, do a quick refresh, what we should see is just our hello world restored. So our backup and restore seems to be working correctly. Keep in mind this is PX backup using generic CSI providers to use backups of the entire application, metadata, Kubernetes objects, and PVCs that are based on that backend. In this case, it's Ceph, but it can be AWS EBS, Pure PSO, and the various other CSI providers that are out there in the world. So hopefully this makes sense, and until next time, take care.